So there's a phrase they use in stagecraft, playing to the rafters. In a stage play, you have audience members all the way in the back. They're too far away to make out the actor's facial expressions or the fine details of the set or the costumes. Voices echo through the auditorium, and there could be hundreds of other breathing, coughing, whispering bodies between the audience in the back and the actors on the stage. For these reasons, stage actors need to play it big, and they need to play it broad. They perform overly exaggerated gestures, facial expressions, and vocal intonations. Their makeup, designed to look good at a distance under harsh lights, looks garish and clownish up close. They need to say what they're thinking and what they're feeling because the audience, the ones up in the rafters, aren't going to be able to pick up on body language or other subtle social cues. But in television, actors don't have the same constraints, so the medium doesn't have the same conventions. Lines of dialogue can be mixed to the exact volume needed for the greatest effect. Close-ups can capture minute changes in facial expression, and framing a shot can bring a tiny object or subtle movement into focus. A good television actor can be a good stage actor and vice versa, but they wouldn't play those roles in the same way. And if you go to a theater to watch Amadeus and you're expecting Breaking Bad, you're going to have a bad time, or at least leave the theater confused. This video is about JRPGs, don't click off the video. Modern, high-budget games, JRPGs in particular, are often referred to as cinematic, like a movie. And of course, this is true, right? We have actors, not just voice actors, but performance capture. We have lighting and framing shots in and out of cutscenes. Graphics aren't photorealistic, but they are about as detailed as a real face. These are pretty recognizable and universal conventions of the medium at this point, and most gamers are used to seeing them. It would be weird and notable for a big-budget, high-profile AAA title to not have, like, cutscenes and mocap and voice acting. And by the end of the PS2 era, these conventions were already really starting to be the norm. Because of that, going back in time to 32-bit, 16-bit, and earlier games can be pretty tough. Especially story-driven games with sprawling narratives and epic scopes like JRPGs, I hear the same complaints time and time again. The writing doesn't feel natural. The graphics are too simple, I can't get into the characters. Why do they talk like that? Something is just off. So there's no accounting for taste, and nobody is obligated to like the things that I like, but I think there's something else going on here, something interesting. Take Final Fantasy VI. Great game, very much a product of its era, and constrained by the technology of its time. Compare it to Final Fantasy XVI, and these games inhabit mediums with completely different technical constraints. Of course they do, right? Just look at them. But the same way stage plays and televisions are both acting, Final Fantasy VI and Final Fantasy XVI are both games, but their conventions are fundamentally and necessarily different. Final Fantasy VI is hokey, it's melodramatic, the characters do not act like actual humans, and the writing has a weird quality to it that can be hard to put your finger on. And it's not because they didn't know how to write, it's not because they weren't taking the medium of games seriously, or because the games were aimed at kids, or because the translation was bad. Final Fantasy VI was a Super Nintendo game. The character sprites were 16 by 24 pixels, and that's not a lot of real estate to work with. Similarly, cart size was at a premium. Of course they couldn't afford space for voice acting, but even the script had to be limited. Every character of text is a byte, and Final Fantasy VI, the entire game, graphics, story, music, systems, is only 2 megabytes. If you want more text, the game needs more memory, and the cart is going to be more expensive to print, and Final Fantasy VI is one of the larger games on the Super Nintendo as is. This is all to say the canvas that they were working with was relatively small, and when you're trying to tell an epic story at a low fidelity, you have to play it big, and you have to play it broad. And that's why in Final Fantasy VI, happy characters pump their arms up and down, and embarrassed characters turn bright red and spin around. In the same way that new games try very hard to emulate the language of film, an older game with the tiny sprites and the limited text on screen didn't really have this option. They didn't have the tools to communicate the nuance that something like a movie or a television show does. But they do a very good job of communicating using the language of theater. Older JRPGs, Final Fantasy VI, and others of course, have a very stage play quality to them. The characters are constantly telling you what they're thinking and what they're feeling, because there's no other reasonable and effective means of conveying subtext or internality. Like a stage actor in a play, the game developers had to play it to the rafters. They had no choice. And I think with that in mind, they do a pretty good job. So anyway, that's just a thought that's been rattling around in my head, and a short video. I'm an octopus. Like and subscribe. Game design. Bye.